Welcome back to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friends. And if you are new to our show, welcome home. This is where you get the best advice, the solid grounding in both mindset and skill set on what it takes to build a sustainable coaching or consulting business. And this is another interview in our Community Builder series. And today we're talking to Erin Halper. Welcome to Life After Corporate.
Thank you. And thanks so much for inviting me to be here.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled for this conversation today. I'm truly excited. I know a lot of clients in my community are also members of the Upside. I know you're up to great things, and here we're excited to learn all about it. So first, before we dive in, tell us your life after corporate story. What were you doing before the Upside? And what was that pivotal moment in 2016 or 17 where you had this idea that the Upside needed to be brought into the world?
Well, it's funny because I was actually consulting out on my own for 7 years before starting the Upside. So the jump really happened way before the Upside. It happened 7 years ahead of that moment. And it was a pretty frivolous decision, and one padded with a lot of privilege and luxury. I had just gotten married to someone who also owns his own business. And I don't think he really loved the structure of, I get 2 weeks vacation and this amount of sick days. He was like, wait, we can't just travel and do what we want when we want, because he was used to that lifestyle. And I knew someone else at my company who had gone out on her own as a consultant. And I was like, I'm just going to do that. That sounds great. Didn't think twice about it. I have an entrepreneurial spirit. It sounded like no big deal. She coached me into how much to charge, how to structure the deals. And there we went. And it was easy breezy. My employer became my first client. My past employer became my second client. Easy breezy, flexible, traveled, all the good things. But what started as a frivolous want quickly turned into a need when I was pregnant with my first son. And I found out at that 20-week ultrasound that there was something majorly wrong with the baby. I can just remember those words of the doctor saying, literally, there's something wrong with the baby. And of course, you hear those words and everything just stops, time stops. Your problems in the world mean nothing at that moment. The good news is he is a thriving, healthy teenager now, happy ending. He's wonderful. He's healthy, but it didn't start out that way. So I ended up needing all that flexibility to go to all the doctor's appointments and all the hospital stays and just all the things that come with caring for a sick child or a sick loved one. Fast forward 7 years later, I had another kid, moved twice, buried a parent, all the ups and downs of life. And I still continued that consultancy. And a lot of things were converging all at the same time in that 2016, 2017 time period. It was a really pivotal time for women. It was a really interesting time for women in the workforce. And in my suburban New York town, I couldn't help but notice so many women just quitting, leaving their jobs, quitting. I kept saying, oh, you don't need to quit. Like, you can consult and it's easy and it's flexible and you can still keep your work. And they just were like, yeah, but how do I do that? And it kind of, I didn't really understand how they didn't understand how to do it. It was like something I thought was so
I know, right?
It was like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean? It's not that hard. You just do this. And, it's funny because the things that seem easy to us and not valuable because they're so easy are really challenging for other people. And it's why there's experts out there that charge for their time and charge for their expertise. So that happened. Plus there were I kept getting inundated with all these multi-level marketing pitches. So all these women in my network started selling Roden Fields and Beauty Counter and all this stuff. And I was like, why are you a commission-only salesperson? Don't let them tell you this is a business and that you're an entrepreneur. It's a commission-only sales position. Why would you do that and throw away 20 years of your career experience when you could start your own business, own your own IP? Why? And it just, all these things kind of came together and lit a fire under me. And I said, now it's time to start a business. But the business was not a community when I first started. It was matching consultants with clients, which was a business I hated. So
Interesting. We have so many parallels here. There must have been something astrologically in the stars in 2016, 17, because I saw the same pattern. And also, I can also tell that you're a pattern. You recognize patterns and you pull together strategies. We probably overlap on Strength Finders too. But there was something happening and those women weren't being served. You're right. When you understand it. And for me, I was an intrapreneur. I was like hired to launch programs inside of the company that I was in. So I thought, oh, well, you just launch it for yourself. And here are the steps. And they're the same steps, right? So that's so fascinating. And yes, and who knew? Like we're living in this time right now where it feels like, oh, suddenly everyone's leaving corporate. But this has been happening in stages for a long time. It's now that it's probably happening at a more rapid pace and people are paying more attention to it. So very, very interesting that you first started as matching consultants to opportunities. So how did the Upside start?
Yeah, so that version I hated. I ran it for about 18 months. And although I guess it was successful from a numbers standpoint, what I realized was I was serving the wrong audience. So I was serving the businesses that I thought would be lining up to hire very expensive consultants. And, because I wasn't willing to work with cheap labor. I really wanted everyone to be paid what they were worth, but businesses were not so keen on that necessarily. There wasn't this big demand from the business standpoint. And what I realized was there's this huge demand on the other side. So I had 500, I couldn't believe it, more than 500 people submit a form to work with the Upside to match them with clients. But I'm sitting there busting my hump and pounding the pavement of New York City, trying to drum up the demand for these people. And finally, I just sat back. I was like, why am I worried? Well, I've got this all backwards. I'm like, it needs to go the other way. I have all these people lining up for something that there's just not enough demand for. And anytime I was matching people, which was lovely and it was very fulfilling, but I had to rewrite their bios, help them redo their LinkedIn. I was like, I can't put you in front of a client the way things look right now. You're not ready. Yes, you're ready to do the work, but you aren't positioned in a way that makes you look like someone who's running an independent consulting business. You look like an employee. The way it just wasn't optimized. They weren't optimized. And again, my naive self was like, why is that so hard for people to understand? They have to switch their positioning if they're trying to get hired as a consultant. And so I would help them. And then I was like, wait a minute, you need to meet this person. She's doing something very similar and you two need to know each other. And after just dozens of that, I finally said, you know what? I need to consolidate all the information in one place, bring people together, help them help each other, and build a business around that.
That's beautiful. So you are a super connector, and it's clear that that's your superpower. And just bringing together people in community who needed to know each other was the impetus for the Upside version 2, right? Yeah. So what are some of the lessons that you learned along the way as you were building community, right? So building community is hard. We talked about this in a conversation a couple of weeks ago. Like everyone thinks it's so easy, get a platform, set it up, open doors, invite people. Yeah. So everyone thinks it's so easy to build a community, and it's not. There's so many more layers to it. So what were some of the early lessons that you had to learn the hard way?
Deb, how long is this show? This conversation, just this alone, I could spend 2 hours talking about.
Wow.
There weren't a lot of people doing this back then. All of us, Kate, me, Geisha, we were all building these things from scratch without any roadmap, without any mentors to teach us what to do. All of us were figuring this out as we went along. Now there's some best practices. Now there's some lessons learned. But back then it was just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what would stick. So many lessons. I think the big piece is that you can't just throw people in a room, expect them to pay for that, and throw events and programming and things at them. and expect that to be of value to people, because it's not. It's about the connections and about creating a structure where people can help one another to help themselves. And that is really hard to do. I think a big lesson that I wish I'd learned much earlier was keeping that market product fit shorter, that time period shorter. I think I tested and tried a lot of things for too long. And that constant feedback loop was really draining on me. I should have trusted my gut on things, trusted what I was putting out there way earlier, instead of constantly trying to get feedback and constantly trying to see what was working. I think the other lesson I learned, I think you know this already because of the way your business model worked, but it took me a really long time to understand how much people valued being with me, because I never thought it was never about me. I'm not a coach. I'm not a coach where you get coached by me and then you go into the community, or that's not the model. And that I never saw myself that way, but I should have put myself more front and center from the very beginning, because no one's going to join a community if they don't like you, or if they don't vibe with you. And that's okay, because there's enough to go around, but I kind of hid behind the brand for way too long.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that, because, there is this dance we do about personality versus brand, especially if you're building something that ultimately you want to be able to sell, or, scale in a different way, or don't want it to be dependent on you and your personality. But it is a balance, because people do buy the vibe and the intelligence and the reason why, the people who you attract too.
Yeah, people who I attract. And I actually think that's a really good thing, because then, the community mirrors your values, and it just makes for a very easy, wonderful business and everyday life. We have lovely, wonderful members, because they're a reflection of the values that I set forth. So that's why I feel that way. Maybe someone else would come in the community from the outside and say, I don't love these people. That's okay. There's a community for you too. That's what community is. It shouldn't be all things to all people. And I would also say that for anyone building a community, first of all, being all things to all people isn't what community is. Community inherently is niche. It's tribes and groups of people coming together with a common interest. And I would say it doesn't operate under the same rules as other businesses. So when you think of, I come from a private equity background. Let me tell you something. The rules of business do not apply to community. It is very, very different. It's its own thing. And anytime I see someone try to bust up a community and blow it out and scale it really big, really fast, I'm always like, ooh, I wish I could short that community, because that is not going to work out. And I already know it's not going to work out, because that's not a community. Maybe it's something else. You can call it something else, but that is not what a community is. It's not this scale big, scale fast, put $100 million of VC funding behind it, and this thing's going to be, that's not a community.
Yeah. So what is a community in your definition, and what was that community value on which you based the upside?
I mean, sometimes it's just a nuance in how we define things. When we're using the word community, think of the other original communities from human history, churches and synagogues and mosques. Those are really the original communities of our humanity. And what do they all have in common other than the name of the God that they choose? It doesn't matter. It's all about people coming together. When there's a death in someone's family, the community comes together to help that person at the church or the mosque or the synagogue. There's this level of support, whether you know that person personally or you don't. They're part of your community, so you're going to step up for that person. So I think if you can extrapolate that concept all the way to our business communities of today, there's this idea of people are there to support one another and to give, not just take. And that's a really different concept than a SaaS business, for example, or other types of networks where you're there to take, you're there to walk away with something that is transactional in nature. To me, communities are not transactional in nature. Maybe call that a network. That's what a network is, maybe, or something else. But communities are not just for personal growth, but to help one another.
They're relational. They're based on relationships and the values of reciprocity and things like that. So how did you establish that in the Upside? Like, what were the early challenges that you faced in establishing that sense of community and reciprocity?
Yeah, there's structure and there's boundaries. So we have structures in place where people have a space to reciprocate, where they have structure to reciprocate. We have events and programs that are designed around giving and getting. The structure itself fuels the reciprocity that you're talking about. And then there's boundaries. We have boundaries around what is and isn't allowed in the Upside. And yes, some of these are subjective, but we don't allow selling in the Upside. We don't allow people to come in and pitch their services. Everybody wants clients in the Upside. But we try to create a lot of boundaries and communicate those boundaries in a front-loaded way, even before people join the membership. Even when you fill out the application, there are many questions around, what are you here for? What are you coming here for? Do you agree with our non-selling policy? Because I've been in communities before, and I've been in communities where somebody offered something to me that I thought was genuine, and it was really them trying to sell me something. And I just personally don't have time for that. Nobody does. It rubbed me the wrong way. And I thought, when I have my community, I'm not doing this. Like, this is not going to be allowed. The Upside, and what I think most communities should be, is a place to work on yourself or work on your business, meet the right people, get support, not sell your services. Again, that's a network. That's not a community.
I love that differentiation. What would you say is the turning point? Like, when did Gina Bianchini uses the word flywheel? When you hit that point where your audience just starts to grow in I know, very deliberate, but much more accelerated way. What was that point where you felt like, wow, this is really taking off. We've got something here.
Really, from the beginning, I mean, it snowballed, but in a very patient way. I was very lucky that I was able to be patient with the business. When we operate in a scarcity mindset around our businesses, and I'm sure you talk to your clients about this all the time, you can make some really bad decisions. And I found myself in that mode sometimes. I mean, you can't help it once in a while, especially when you're green in a business. But if you can check that at the door, be patient, let it grow. Let one person tell the other person who tells the other person. If you focus your time on retention, not just acquisition, then the people inside your community will feel nurtured. They will feel like they want others to be part of it, and they want to tell others about it. That's how our flywheel started. It was, and by the way, there is a tipping point in numbers too, where when you have a certain amount of members, for us, it was probably around 120, then it starts to really go, because it's hard to get people to join something that's only 30 people. It's hard. It's like, what are we joining? What's the point? Like, and then, who am I? Okay, great. I've met everyone. Now what? So there's not like this constant flow of newness, but it does pick up after around 100, 120 people, and creating a structure and an easy way for people to tell others about it. I mean, that's the flywheel, is referrals, and make it easy for people to tell others about it. Make it really, really easy. I see ads sometimes for communities. It's really rare that I see them, but once in a while I'll see an ad for a community that says such and such community for blah, blah, blah. We have a wait list of 5,000, If you had a wait list of 5,000 people, you don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on LinkedIn advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like, I'm like, who is falling for this? This is not, okay. So no one has a wait list of 5,000 people who are ready to spend their money and join. That's not true. Okay. So when we think about the flywheel, it's about genuine referrals, the right members, attracting the right members from the beginning, because similar to clients, the members breathe more of themselves.
Yes.
So making sure that you're planting those seeds in the beginning with the right people, because they will just grow a garden of more of them, which is what you want if you have the right people in from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And making it easier for them. Are you referring to like referral partners or affiliate relationships or just
I've never done that. No, I've never done that at all. I've never gone to the outside because, you know, we've talked about this before, Deb, but I think, you know, everyone finds their person, and, you know, the person, the consultant or the coach that wants to work with Deb, that's their person. That's great. Like, they connect with you. They love what you're putting out there. They've made a choice. Now, if they join the upside too, that's lovely, but I don't go after other people's audiences. I just make it easy for the members we have to tell other people about the upside, because they know, they're inside already. They already know what the vibe is. They're not going to invite somebody in who's not a fit for that vibe.
Yeah. And how do you make it easy for them?
Well, simply put, we have a form that is like 3 questions. So it's like a 20-second ask, and there's a reward. And this took me a very long time to understand. And I still think it sounds so conceited saying this, but it works, and it's a value. If their person joins, they get a one-on-one with me. And it took me a long time, which I know sounds disgustingly conceited.
It doesn't. You have value.
But
yeah.
I asked the members, I said, what would you want in return for referrals? And they said, we want a one-on-one with you. And I was really honestly shocked. I really was, but it's a win-win because I love doing them. I get to know the members on a much deeper level. And then they get the advice, you know, the one-on-one advice that they're looking for.
I love that. That's great. What were some of the hard learnings along the way?
Oh, Deb.
Just name one. What was the biggest thing that you had to learn along the way?
I think the hardest thing to learn was getting out of scarcity mode. You know, every time someone left, it felt like I was getting stabbed in the heart. And that's a terrible feeling because people move on. Sometimes people, they're not even in that business anymore. Sometimes they get a full-time job. Sometimes they've just gotten what they needed and they're ready for something different, and that's okay. But for way too long, it literally felt like it hurt on a very deep and emotional level when people left. Luckily, with enough coaching and maturity, I no longer feel that way. And I'm close friends with a lot of members that have graduated out or have moved on to different things. I keep in touch with them to the point where we even have alumni events just for members who are no longer even in the upside, just to keep in touch and say hello and see what everyone's up to now. That was a huge, huge mindset shift that I wish I had had from the beginning. But again, there was just a lack of maturity, quite honestly, and lack of mindset, the right mindset in the beginning. And I think I just needed to stumble all over myself for a few years before getting to that point.
Yeah. And I love that because it's so easy. I mean, we as, you know, whether you're leading a community or you're a coach, we get attached. I always tell my clients, you know, I'm like the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. You're always in my ecosystem. I'm always going to check in on you or invite you back for something else. How has the upside changed you?
It's funny you asked that because I actually just finished a huge volunteer project where it's my last year. I ran the musical theater program at our elementary school. And it is parent run. There's no district funding. So parents have to step up and produce it if we want a show. So I was the lead on that for several years. And as I was wrapping up my final speech to everyone after our final performance, I talked to my husband. I was like, wow, I feel like the upside has taught me so much about how to deal with people. And even in the 4 years I was working on that musical theater program, I saw myself evolve alongside the upsides evolving into someone who doesn't fear conflict, doesn't fear people, who isn't offended by somebody's a negative opinion where it would usually, take me down to a really dark place. It became something where I was like, I think that person needs a friend, and I'm going to reach out to that person with a different approach instead of a, how could you? It's, let's have coffee. Let's talk about, I could tell someone needs to be heard or seen. I just handle people so differently now than I did years ago. And it's all data points. You're talking, when you're dealing with thousands of people over the years, you learn a few things. And, that did not come naturally to me. I am very sensitive. I'm very introverted. I don't like dealing with conflict. I don't like confrontation. I don't like any of that stuff. But through the upside, I learned to push out of that comfort zone. Because if you want to run a community business, you best get good at that.
Yeah, I would say entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey. It's the ultimate form. It's the ultimate form of personal development because you'll be, forced to face yourself and scarcity, fears, not loving conflict. All of those things come with the job. So, it's just par for the course. You mentioned, conflict, and before we hit record, we were talking about competition because I was having a strategy call with someone and who realized I was going to be interviewing you for this show. And she was like, oh, I'm surprised that you're interviewing Erin because aren't you guys competitors? And I looked at her, I was like, no, we're not. We actually offer something different. And many of my clients, my favorite clients, are all members of the Upside too. And people need different things from different people. I'm a coach. I have community. But it's not like the Upside. And so I thought that was interesting. Like, what is your position on competition?
Deb, even if we did do the exact same thing, even if the models 100% mirrored one another, it still wouldn't be competition because I'm not you and you're not me.
Yeah.
People who aren't experienced entrepreneurs don't often realize that the business stems from the founder, their vibe, their look, their values, their experiences. It reflects them in many, many, many ways. So there is no competition because there's only one of you and there's only one of me. I also feel like I feel so privileged that I get to know so many people in this space because like you, I could talk about this stuff all day long. I never get tired of it. It is what fuels me and it fuels my career. So it's awesome to know other people who are dealing with the craziness and building these businesses. Also, like you said, we don't do the exact same thing. Nobody does the exact same thing. You can be similar, or have a similar audience or have overlap, but nobody's exactly the same. And like you said before, you're a coach. I'm not a coach. I never claimed to be a coach. I never positioned myself as a coach, and I never sold coaching. That's a big differentiator. I had someone come to me 2 weeks ago who said, oh, I want to get hired. I'm interviewing for a job. They want me to help scale and build out their law firm. Is that something the Upside can help me with? And I said, no, because you don't own the business. It's not your business. We only take owners. So, you're an employee technically. No, but I'm going to be a partner. Yeah, no, still no. Like if you don't own 51% of that equity, like it's just not, we're not a fit for you. I said, but there is this person named Deb Boulanger that you must talk to because she will tell you if you're a fit for her coaching program. This sounds like something she could work with you one-on-one. So to be a resource for people and be able to say, hey, maybe this isn't quite the fit for you, but talk to this one or this one. It's really valuable to people. It's really valuable. There's a lot of times where people aren't quite the right fit for the upside. And I feel so fortunate that I know other people that I can send their way.
Yeah. And we had a similar conversation too with Megan Conter, who's the founder and CEO of the Dames. And you don't get into the Dames unless you're already over six figures. And so Megan and I refer back and forth to each other all the time. And I think it's this moving beyond the scarcity mindset, which is also so prevalent today. So I'm sure that we have served the listeners in having this conversation about scarcity and, looking for all the abundance that's there. Is there anything you want to share about the future of the upside? Where do you see the community going? Is there anything new that you're going to be including or launching?
Not launching, but everything new we do is for the members.
Mm-hmm.
So I am someone who is constantly driven by excellence. And to me, you can never get a 100, it's just never going, there's no such thing, but I'm still going to aim for it every single time. And what I care about most is making the most high quality, high ROI community that exists. That is my goal. And so everything I do is internal. You don't see a whole lot on the outside. You don't see new launches. You don't see innovation on the outside. The innovation's on the inside. So I told our members this year is the year of innovation. That is the word of the year for the upside. So creating all sorts of tech tools for our members, not for the outside, even though I could take that and sell that on the outside because it's that valuable. It's just for the members. So really taking all the data points, pricing data, all these things, and creating tools and tech inside the community that members can use. But I don't foresee a day where we launch on the outside. I'm not going to say never, because that's a dirty, dirty word, that word never. I said I'd never get a dog, and here we are. I have one right next to me, barking away. But I don't want to say never, but I'm just not focused on launches. In fact, that word, I get triggered by the word launch because back in 2019, when everyone was launching digital courses, I did that too. It was awesome. It made a lot of money, but I actually hated live launches. It gave me so much agita, and it just was so unaligned with who I am as a person that I said, I don't like launches anymore. Maybe I'll roll out quietly new products and services here and there, but anything new is internal for the members.
Yeah, I love that. And we all get to operate from our zone of genius because I love live launches. They turn me on. I get so excited.
Oh, Deb. See, this is why it's good to know each other, because, it's like what lights you up makes me lose sleep at night. And it's just so, that's why everyone's different. And I think, and this is for, just going back a few seconds, when you were talking about the audience listening and the scarcity mindset, the abundance mindset, in the upside, we put people together who are very similar for the whole purpose of, hey, share what's working and what's not working. Help one another. There are enough clients to go around. You don't have to have such scarcity mode around it. And when people bring down those walls, including ourselves, Deb, we bring down those walls and we can just say, hey, you know what? I have a question about community. I'm going to call Erin Halper. I have her number. I'm going to text her, see if she can answer this for me. We have to be open to that instead of saying, oh, I'm not going to ask her a question because it's too similar. No, I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Because again, there's enough to go around and nobody is you. Nobody can be you. So, I mean, listen, I see my stuff copied all over the place. It's very flattering. I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to see that people are learning best practices and applying them to other places. And like I said, my focus, I learned way too late to put on my blinders and just focus on what I'm doing and don't pay attention to what others are doing. Just focus on what I'm building, do a great job at it, and just stay in that lane and keep going straight.
Agreed. And this is the new era. It's cooperation over competition. And that's how we're going to get through this season that we're in right now. It's how we're going to grow collectively as entrepreneurs. And so I just want to thank you, Erin. And if anyone wants to learn more about the Upside, where do they go?
It's betheupside.com.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with Life After Corporate listeners today.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks for inviting me on.
It's my pleasure. And if you enjoyed this episode, my friends, please consider leaving us a rating or review on your favorite streaming platform. It's our joy to bring the best and brightest minds in entrepreneurship and community to you so that we can all thrive. We'll see you next week. Take care.